Good morning, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. This is Raising 10, episode 17. If you ever want to get a hold of me, you can email me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com, or you can check out my social media pages. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all those places. I appreciate you listening, and I'm always looking for you to go to my YouTube channel, and under playlists is where all the Raising 10 and Raising 8 podcasts are. You can check those out. While you're there, please subscribe to my channel. It doesn't cost anything. It's not going to harm you in any way. It just helps me grow my channel. And I appreciate it. Watch the shorts, watch, the whole podcast or whatever you want to do. And of course, I'm also on Amazon and Apple and Spotify and all those places if you just want to listen to the podcast. So again, thank you for listening. I actually recorded this podcast last week, and I just thought about it and didn't like the way it came out. So again, this is Raising 10, episode 17, and we're going to change it up a little bit. As I was going through my playlist the other day, I was looking at all the topics that we covered, and it's like well over 25 podcasts now in this realm about raising kids. And again, this is from a father's perspective. No insult to women or moms. This is just from my perspective of how I see things when the kids were growing up. And I noticed that a lot of my topics had a not a negative connotation, but they're about challenges, right? It was about discipline. We've talked about, education. We've talked about mediation. We've talked about relationships between you and your mom and how important those relationships are. We've talked about discipline. We've talked about autism twice, two times with two different doctors. Great input. Talked with life coaches. But those all seem to gather, center around the challenges of being a parent. But the reality is 90% of the time, it's the most joyous thing you'll ever do in your life is having children. It has been for me anyway. And I miss the kids being home. I miss the noise. And, as your kids are growing up, they're going to have a lot of firsts, a lot of first time things. And I'll tell you a quick story before we get really into this. And it's not going to be a long podcast because it would just be me telling stories about how proud I am of my kids. And as you know, how proud you are of your kids. It just kind of brings a tear to your eye. And I was going through photos a couple of weeks ago. I think it was raining, and I was watching a movie, which I rarely ever sit down and do that. But I was going through photos and just remembering all the good times we had because I have a lot of old photos on my phone. And it was just really, I probably had some tears rolling down my face of the times that I was so proud of my kids. But I was calling on a customer one day, and this guy, I could hear him. He was a new customer for me. I just started with this company, and I could hear him in the background kind of getting aggressive with some of the other people at the job. And, I know the leadership had a specific culture they wanted to implement. This guy was not one of those people. And this was back a long time ago. This was in construction, and it wasn't, people didn't care as much about culture. They were trying to develop culture, but this guy was just an old school kind of construction guy. And I was waiting for him, and he called the front desk and said, "You can send him back." So I'm like, "Oh, great." I've just listened to him yell at somebody, like berate them for a few minutes, and now I got to go talk to this guy. So I walked in, and he's a really big man, and he was sitting down, and he stood up and shook my hand, about enveloped my hand with these gigantic mitts he had. And he's kind of like, "Well, what do you want?" And I was just talking to him about some of the projects that were coming up and some of the things I had bid on. But I noticed something, and this good salespeople do this. They notice what pictures on the wall and things like that. And behind his desk, he had a picture of two little twin boys, and they were little redhead kids. They're probably 3 years old, 4 years old. And I asked him, I said, "Chris, are those your children?" And when he turned around and looked at this picture, his entire demeanor changed. He went from that aggressive construction guy to this loving father that was so proud of his little kids. And he started talking about his kids, and I just let him talk, and he was telling me that they're getting into bowling and they do this and they do all these other things. And like I said, they're only 3 or 4 years old in this picture. But I tell you, over the years, and I knew this guy for, probably the next 10 or 15 years. I mean, I still know him. I just don't see him on a regular basis. He'd always update me on his kids, then they're turning, they're 10 years old, then they're 12, then they're teenagers, and then they're young adults, and they were really into bowling. I don't know how they got into that, but it was something that they did a lot of, and he was continually telling me about how proud he was of how they won this tournament or did good in this tournament. And both boys had their own personality, but they still were a lot alike. And it just kind of goes to, talk about this podcast of how proud I was of my kids when they first started walking, when they first started talking. I had my first child in 1986, my daughter, my oldest daughter, and the day she was born, I remember it like it was yesterday. She was born at Kaiser Zion. All three of my older kids were. And I can remember just the joy I felt in my heart and, tears rolling down my face as she was born. And then the ensuing, taking her home and all these first things that she did, all the mistakes we made as parents, but she survived and she's doing very well now. But all of my kids they would get involved in things. And I can tell you, 90% of the tears I've ever cried in my life were from pride, not from bad things or from good things. And it's no surprise people want to have more than one child. Once they have one, so a lot of times people have more than one child. Some people have one, and that's good for them. Some people don't have any kids, and I think they're missing out. And maybe there's reasons why they can't have kids, and that's not what this podcast is about. It's about just these looking for the good things in your kids and how they get involved in things and they have little successes that you never they have little successes that they didn't think they could accomplish, but you knew they could, and if they just tried. It's like riding a bike. I know when my grandson was learning how to ride a bike, I could not get him to like get into it. Finally, one day I kind of said, well, forget it. If you want to ride a bike, it's sitting there. And he actually got it next to the curb, got on his bike, and lo and behold, before you knew it, he was riding that bike. And it was such a prideful moment for me to watch him because he didn't give up. That was the big key. He did not give up and he kept trying and things like that. And there's so many practical ways to retrain your attention to your kids and look for those good things in them. They're all different. They all deal with things different. They all have their own successes. And like I said, they tried so many things. I had kids that ran track and kids that played sports, basketball and softball. And my son played flag football and he played basketball. He played all these things. And I just loved going to watch them play sports. And I was not one of those parents yelling at the referees or yelling at my kids. I just wanted them to enjoy the moment and get that team feeling, because I had that when I was a kid. And I know when I was a young man, I played sports. My dad never missed a sport. He always would show up. He didn't show up during the week sometimes when he was out drinking, but he always made sure he came to my sporting events, whether it was baseball or basketball or anything. He'd always make sure he showed up. And I know he was proud of me for playing sports and trying. And, I got to be a pretty good basketball player, and I could hear him tell his friends that you should see Ed play basketball and this and that. And that was really cool. And I think that my dad um, really enjoyed watching me play sports as I was proud to watch my kids play sports. And now the grandkids are playing sports, so you get to go out and watch them. So, and a lot of these prideful things are just really small wins. But when you're out there trying to do something and not giving up and keeping grinding and grinding and grinding, and you finally have those little breakthroughs, and this is what I'm talking about when your kids are going to have these little breakthroughs, and they're really amazing to watch. And like I said, I've watched my kids in plays, and I get so choked up when they have a part that they have to do on their own, and I almost have to wear sunglasses at the play so no one can see me crying. But I'm not embarrassed to cry because I'm proud of my children or my grandchildren. So I think the real transformation takes place as we are parents and leaders is when we notice the good in our kids, right? We see them helping people. I had two kids, one mainly that wasn't getting great grades in elementary school. She was struggling a little bit. And what we came to find out is that she was so busy helping other kids succeed that she didn't do her work. Now, you can't get mad at that. You have to make her understand or help her understand that she really needs to take care of herself first and then she can help people out. But it was kind of nice to know that she was helping kids succeed and making sure that they were organized, that they were doing what they were supposed to do. So that was kind of it was a fun problem to have, right? We had to get her on track and pay attention to what she was doing. But how can you not enjoy the fact that she was just helping other people? Um, uh, I have notes over here. I'm looking to the left here. It says, I have a note that says their unexpected strengths. Now, some of the kids, especially as they got older and became adults, had surprised me with some of the things that they were really good at and how tough they were and how hard of workers they were. I didn't know that all my kids were going to have that work ethic, and they do. They all have really good work ethics. Now, I know that I'm sitting here talking about my kids for no, maybe 28 episodes now. I said it was the 17th episode. That's of raising 10. There was plenty of other ones that were raising 8. And I'm not telling you that my kids are perfect. It's kind of like your mom, like my mom was the best mom ever. Well, all my friends said that they had the best mom ever, and they did because that was their mom. Well, these are my kids, and you guys, as you're listening to this podcast, I hope you're thinking about these little unexpected wins that your kids are having and the cute things they say and how they do such a good job when they do like dance or soccer or whatever, and they're getting coached. And I know right now my granddaughter's playing basketball, and I'm excited to see how she accepts the coaching. She's done a lot of theater work, not a lot, but she's done a lot since she's only 12 years old. She's actually in a play right now that debuts this weekend. And I like the fact that she's listening and she's getting it and she's memorizing her lines and she's memorizing songs because it tells me she's very coachable. And coachable kids make good employees and they make good leaders and they make good, CEOs and that. And so I'm excited that she's getting coached and that she's doing a good job accepting that coaching. Um, when you're building a family culture, it's all rooted in encouragement, right? It's you guys telling your kids that they can do it, that it's okay if they fail. They don't, I don't really see it as failure. I just see it as another opportunity not to do it that way. I remember when I was a kid, I rode skateboards a lot. And I had this one friend that you'd show him a trick. I'd learn a trick on a skateboard and practice and practice and practice. And I'd show it to him once and boom, he got the trick. I mean, he never had to, it just kind of came natural to him. And I don't know if it was his attitude towards it or what it was, but he was very skilled in a lot of different things. And that's kind of the way it is with your kids. You just watch them try stuff and try stuff and try stuff until they get it right. And then it's just super exciting moment. So like I said, without a doubt, the most successful thing I've ever done in my life is have children. And I miss the children being at home. I said that already. And I miss the noise and I miss all those things. And when the grandkids come over and we watch them, it's very reminiscent of when my kids were little and there was a lot of stuff going on in the house. But I loved it. And it was so enjoyable to watch my kids. Some of them with bigger personalities than others. Some of them, they all had different skills. And it was cool to watch them, you know, enhance those skills as they got older. It's kind of like sitting down at dinner and some of them like a certain food and others don't. It's just one of those different personality things. And it's amazing to me, and I've said this multiple times, how many different personalities the kids had growing up in the same house, different beliefs, different things. But when they're out there in the real world, the social world, they're learning things that they're being convinced that they're correct in, and I'm not. And that's just part of being a parent. Um, the scariest thing about raising kids, and now I'm going back to a kind of a negative thing, is what the media and social media is telling them how they should be. When you've kind of made a moral, foundation for them, and then they're coming back and saying, "Well, that's not true because I heard this," but that's just being a parent. That's just part of that's just part of the way it goes. And then you talk to them and you're patient and you manage it. I was talking to somebody yesterday about they were getting accolades about being a good leader at work. And conversely, they had somebody that said that they weren't a good leader because of this and that. And I know this person has 6 children because it's my son. And he's made a funny statement. He said he notices that a lot of the people in his life that are successful, that are good leaders, have a lot of children. Now, is that the recipe for being a good leader? Not necessarily, but it doesn't hurt to be around and be in that leadership role for me for now 39 years. I can tell you that I learned a lot about business and leadership from raising children, and I'm still learning on a regular basis. With my ground truth leadership audit business, that I'm leaning a lot on those leadership skills I learned as a parent because they're not that far off when you're in a company. Now, you don't have the same feelings for your employees, I hope, that you have for your children, but nevertheless, there's still some foundational practices that you can use with employees, subordinates, with your bosses that relate back to when you have kids. Listen, there's times when I would find something out or someone would do something and I would, you know, react really negatively or loudly or whatever. That's that's on me. That was not, and it's hard sometimes when you have 8 children at home. I mean, sometimes they just take you to the end of your wits' end, right? But I got better at that over the years where I was a lot more patient, didn't react so much. I always tell this to people, you get an email or something and it's very insulting to you. And I always want to sit down and just fire back another email back at that person. And I'd always stop myself and wait a couple hours and say, you know what, you're in a reactive mode. Nothing good's going to come out of this email you're going to write. So after I sat there and pondered on it for a couple hours, I could write a legitimate, heartfelt, honest email that wasn't disparaging. That's going to happen with your kids too. There's going to be times when you're ready to explode and you just need to go to another room, you know, go have a soda, go have a drink of water or something, and then come back and deal with those kids. The kids aren't doing it on purpose. They're not doing it just to, light your fire. I mean, some of them might do that, but I don't ever think that's what my kids were doing. They were just being themselves. I have a possible interesting guest that wrote a book about behavior on kids, and hopefully I can get him on my podcast. But anyway, like I said, this wouldn't be a big, long podcast because you all know if you have children, you know what I'm talking about. You know how I feel. You know how proud you are of your kids. Whether they do bad stuff or not, you're still proud of your kids. And I think of, a Bible verse is prodigal son, and you can look that up if you're not religious and you don't know what it is. Look it up. And it's a great story, a Bible story, and it's very relevant to when you're raising kids. So anyway, this is Ed Franklin with the Raising 10 podcast. I know you're proud of your kids, and I'm proud of you for being proud of your kids because it's really so joyful, and it really brings me joy when I talk about my kids or I see them and I see my grandkids, and I'm very proud of all of them, whether they're doing great in life or not. They'll turn it around somehow. They're all very resilient. They say that a lot about kids. Well, they went through a divorce. Well, they're resilient. We're going to cause most of our kids' problems in their life. I got news for you with bad relationships and things like that. And I'm a walking, talking example of that. I put them under a lot of stress that they shouldn't have had to be under, but it was me trying to manage myself, my relationships. That's why it's so important for you, dads and moms, to have a good relationship. It really makes life easier when you're raising kids. Let me see if I missed anything. Parenting can feel like a never-ending cycle of correcting, redirecting, and managing the hard moments, and that is just 100% true. So remember, you can get a hold of me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. Go to my social media pages. Please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. Like I said, it doesn't cost you anything. You're not going to get emails. You're not going to get any of that. Just click the subscribe button. If you haven't seen all my episodes, are you interested, go to my playlist, and that's where all the raising kids play podcasts are, so you can check them out. And I really appreciate you listening. My numbers are still up, and I want them to get bigger. So a lot of that's going to be on guests. Now, if you have a topic you'd like me to cover, shoot me a quick messenger on, LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. Send me a message and see if there's a topic on there, or you have a topic in mind that I haven't talked about that you'd like to have me talk about. And if I have to find a guest, I can find a guest. But like I said, I really appreciate you listening. And I'm getting to the point where I'm able to get a podcast out every week, and I want to continue to do that. So have a fantastic weekend. Spring is coming. The time has changed back, thank God. We're going through this weather change, messing up my sinuses. It's hot, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold, but that's just life. And I'll tell you what, I sat on the beach on Sunday for a couple hours, and it was magnificent. So have a great week, great weekend, and I will talk to all of you very soon.